I will start the meeting with our traditional ringing of the club bell. And welcome everybody. We have currently, I've got 80 people on screens in front of me, and it won't be possible to introduce everybody and to get through the meeting, which has got quite a tight time. So I will welcome everybody. I will welcome all our members, and I welcome all our Rotary visitors, and welcome all our special visitors for the day. I will ask Vasi to introduce all the speakers and her special people when I introduce, after I've introduced Vasi. We have a few birthdays to celebrate today, and I don't want to omit that part of the proceedings. Today's birthday is, and I haven't got a year to add to it, but it's presumably somewhere between, well, I don't know, Peter Pan never ages, and I think the same about Clive Amos. But it's Clive Amos's birthday today, and congratulate Clive on that.
Thank you, David.
We have got, we often present a digital pen to our birthday people who are in attendance, but I'm afraid my digital pen has more or less run out of pixels, and so I'm going to leave that for the moment. It's also, I don't know whether they're on the call or not, the birthday of Mark Zudini. Please say if you are on the call or indicate. Justina Mutali.
I can't see Justina. I haven't seen Justina today.
Andrew Charalambos.
Not seen him either.
Shuak Dasingani. And next Sunday, our Vice President, who is on the call, Ian Balcom. Ian, just wave at us, please. Congratulations on achieving another year, at least by the end of this week. And we trust and hope it will be one of many, many more. I would ask now whether we have an Armourers report from Harry.
Good afternoon, President, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Briefly, I've spoken to Giovanni Merengue, who is one of our more senior colleagues. He is well, and that's really it.
No more news from Prince Philip or others?
Only what you would read in the newspaper.
Yes, he's backing Edward VII, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's come back from...
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more to add. It's my intention to find out a little bit about Albert Kunz. I get to get in touch with Martin Fingers in Interlaken and see what the latest is.
And we have Duchess's apologies for today because she is in hospital at the moment, I believe. But I have no great details.
It'd be difficult to get hold of her. Maybe Vasi might be able to give us some more information.
Okay. So we wish them all a speedy, those that are in hospital, a speedy recovery.
I think Vasi was trying to say something, but she needs to unmute if she gets mentioned about Vasi. Vasi, can you unmute yourself? Tap your mic. That's it.
Okay. Well, the latest news is Duchess is still in hospital. She's had tests, several tests, and she is all in the lab, and the doctors are hoping to see her today to give her the results. So we still don't know how long she's going to be in hospital, because the tests will say. So if I know anything more, I will let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vasi. Thanks, Harry. In fact, it's my next pleasant duty to introduce past President Vasi H. Daniel, whose ambassadorial talents have brought us the exceptional event we have to enjoy today. Vasi will take over the meeting from here and do the introductions and say hello to people. So with no more ado, Vasi, I hand the meeting over to you.
Okay. Should we do the loyal toast before?
Oh,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
David.
Yes, of course. Before we start speaking, I must read my notes. And considering also HRH Prince Philip, the Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen. Thank
Over to you, Vasi.
Am I unmuted now, aren't I? Yes.
Yes, you are. You are okay,
Yeah.
Vasi.
Thank you. Thank you, President David. President David, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests and fellow Rotarians, it is an honor and privilege to chair today's panel. It's a very special panel. The International Women's Day is celebrated on March the 8th today throughout the world. And for me, it's one of the most important days of the year. In 1977, the United Nations declared March the 8th as the day when we celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness about women's equality, lobby for accelerated gender parity, and fundraise female-focused charities. It's also a day when we recognize and remember the past, the present, and the future of women's achievements and accomplishments to the society. International Women's Day has occurred for well over a century, and with the first gathering held in 1911. So this year we are celebrating the 110th International Women's Day. International Women's Day celebrates the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping a more equal future and recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. In some countries like China, Russia, Vietnam, and Bulgaria, the International Women's Day is a national holiday, and in many cases, they men buy women presents and flowers to celebrate the day. The International Women's Day belongs to all groups collectively, everywhere. It is not a country, group, or organization specific. Historically, women have had to fight for gender equality, the right to vote, and the right to work. Because of brilliant women like Jane Austen, Marie Curie, Emmeline Pankhurst, Gloria Steinem, Malala Yousafzai, and many more noble women, women now have more freedom in the world. But there are still many issues that women continue and fight for today, such as equal access to education, equal employment, rights, and equal political representation. We live in a world full of challenges, and individually, we all are responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. We can choose to challenge and call out gender stereotypes and bias. We can choose to seek out and celebrate women's courage and achievements. And collectively, we can create an inclusive and equal world. Well, distinguished guests and Rotary colleagues, before we get the speakers to give us their message, I would like to mention that today's program was actually, it was a teamwork. And I'd like to say that the brochure was designed by Honorary Secretary Chikako Ozawa Horowitz, Administrator Tom Swendlin and Candy Louis. Both worked diligently, sending out emails and circulars to all our distinguished speakers and to our members. They were all a great support to me, and we worked well as a team. And also, I'd like to thank Mayoko Mori. We're very privileged to have her, our pianist today, and she will entertain us. She's a concert pianist during the 8-minute break. We are really very honored and delighted to have 4 very distinguished, high-profile women on the panel today. We thank them very much for celebrating International Women's Day with us. They will each give us a 12-minute message, and we'll take questions at the end. Our first speaker is the High Commissioner of the Republic of Rwanda, Her Excellency Mrs. Yamina Karitani. Prior to her current posting to London, Ambassador Karitani served as a Minister Counselor and High Commissioner in Nairobi. She has also worked as a team at the helm of tourism and conservation portfolios at the Rwanda Development Board and is currently non-residential Rwandan ambassador to Ireland. Ms. Karitani has a proven record in international business and diplomacy, having held various senior positions at Goodworks International and International Strategic Consulting and Advisory Firm serving East Africa and the USA. High Commissioner Karitani holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Studies and an MBA. Impressively, she not only speaks fluently English, but she also speaks French and Kinyarwanda and Swahili. She's a familiar face at our club, and we're very proud to welcome her again. Her Excellency, Mrs. Yamina Karitani. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasi Daniel, President David Johnson, members of the Rotary Club of London, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to start by thanking Dr. Daniel for inviting me to speak today to mark the important occasion of International Women's Day, which this year falls on the same day as the Commonwealth Day. I spoke at one of the Rotary Club of London's regular meetings in September last year on the theme of fighting genocide ideology, and it is a privilege to be invited back to speak on a topic which is very important and a priority for Rwanda: gender equality and women's empowerment. Rwanda inherited a wounding history, which resulted in the genocide against the Tutsi in '94 and stole the lives of innocent Rwandan children, men and women, destroyed the country's limited resources, and shook the very core of our society. Thankfully, 27 years later, we're now firmly on our onward journey of healing, rebuilding, and developing our nation, and we're doing so with a renewed sense of hope and resilience. To quote His Excellency President Paul Kagame, women and men are equal in terms of ability and dignity, and they should also be equal in terms of opportunity. As Rwandans and as a global community, we need every member of our society to use his or her talents to the fullest. The president understood that 51% of our population could not be ignored, and that recognition by the leadership of the need for parity was our early success. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 2020 annual Global Gender Gap Report, Rwanda ranks first in Africa and ninth globally in having closed its gender gap. Rwanda has consistently held the highest female representation of parliamentarians in the world since 2003, currently standing at 61.3%, whilst 52% of our cabinet are also women. Gender equality is one of the fundamental principles guiding Rwanda's constitution, with a quota established stipulating that women must make up 30% of all decision-making organs. In order to achieve the gender statistics we're celebrating today, significant advances have been made to ensure the legal framework that is favorable to women for their maximum protection and empowerment, including the prohibition of any form of gender-based discrimination, punishment of household and gender-based violence, as well as equal rights to land ownership. We've identified financial inclusion as a key sector, a key factor to achieving gender equality. A host of financial policies programs, and strategies have contributed to women's financial inclusion and reduced extreme poverty. These include the Financial Sector Development Strategic Plan, which aims at ensuring 95% of the total population have access to formal financial services by the year 2024. Legal frameworks and continuing financial programs have led to results. In 2020, women-only land ownership was higher than men-only by 10%, with 38% of women accessing credit by using land as collateral. In addition, 84% of women in Rwanda have access to a mobile phone, with 56% now having mobile money accounts. So digitalization has also greatly contributed to women's empowerment. As we look ahead, we must remember that empowering women starts early, with empowering girls and providing a safe and secure society free of gender-based discrimination that enables them to thrive. This safe environment for girls to flourish must be secured through all levels of education. The government of Rwanda has committed to making education more accessible with some key interventions, such as the introduction of 12-year basic education program, construction of education infrastructure, as well as measures for quality assurance in the education sector. In order to increase women's employment opportunities and diversify their skills, Rwanda has continued to strengthen demand-driven technical and vocational educational training programs that will help close the skills gap. Female enrollment in the technical and vocational training program has increased from 39% in 2017 to 41% in 2019. However, despite this increase, the rate of girls' enrollment in vocational training programs is still low compared to their brothers, who stand at 59%. And we know that there's still much work to be done, and have identified vocational training programs as a key area to act on to further bridge the gender gap. Alongside the education sector in Rwanda, we've also made remarkable strides to improve health standards in general and for women in particular. Our focus has been on universal access to equitable and affordable quality healthcare for all Rwandans. And to give an example of some of the key initiatives in this sector, community-based health insurance schemes have contributed to women's access to affordable and quality health services. We've improved health infrastructure and increased the number of medical practitioners and community health workers. We've employed drone technologies for the rapid delivery of emergency health supplies to rural areas. We've also applied the use of artificial intelligence-based mobile applications and short text messages for medical services afforded to those who do not have access to a medical practitioner. These policies and initiatives have led to, among other things, reduced maternal and infant mortality rates. The maternal mortality rate has significantly declined from 1,071 deaths per 100,000 live births in 2000 to 203 deaths per 100,000 in 2020. And the number of births attended by a skilled service provider has increased from 27% in 2000 to 94% in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Rwanda has wholeheartedly committed to creating an ecosystem which encourages women's empowerment at every level of society. Well-functioning institutions, such as the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion, Gender Monitoring Office, and the National Women's Council, ensure that women are able to open a business, access finance, access quality education and quality healthcare with the same level and support as men. We know there's still much work to be done, and there are sobering statistics which must be addressed, such as female-headed household is around 2% more likely to be classified as poor than a male-headed household. And gender-based violence is still underreported, or in many cases reported too late. We've also identified key education programs to act upon, such as bridging the gender divide in ICT, STEM, and technical and vocational education. The COVID-19 pandemic has also forced our institutions to act swiftly to reprogram and fast-track many gender-related projects with an increased focus on economic recovery and access to finance. Dear friends, Rwandans have witnessed the devastating impact of divisive leadership in the past, and we're proud to now have a people-centered, inclusive approach to governance and a consensus-building method where gender equality is at the core of the country's political values and principles. Rwanda's Vision 2050 has solidified gender equality as one of our main aspirations for national transformation and prosperity. I have strong faith that the new generation will take advantage of the enabling environment in Rwanda to tackle gender issues. I also believe that the positive impact that has been seen in my country can be replicated and applied elsewhere with will and commitment to achieving SDG 5. As many of you know, Rwanda will host the next Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit in Kigali this June, with the Commonwealth Women's Forum set to take place on the 21st and 22nd of June. And as the youngest member of the Commonwealth, Rwanda considers it a duty to share our story and experiences with other Commonwealth nations, while also learning from others who have achieved what we strive to achieve. We've come a long way, yes, but together and by exchanging best practices from around the world, sharing our experiences, our successes and failures, we can achieve more as we work towards a common and fairer future. Let me end by reminding us all that women's rights remains an absolute human rights issue, and which can only be addressed by both men and women working together. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. Our next speaker today is Ms. Debbie Tripoli. She's a Director of Environmental Policy and Advocacy at World Wildlife Fund. Debbie leads several core advocacy teams within WWF across a range of policy issues. Her overall aim is to achieve stronger environmental laws and policies within the UK, working towards halting the loss of nature, driving the UK economy towards net zero carbon by 2030, and restoring our natural environment for the benefit of future generations. She is currently focused on driving forward WWF's work to achieve a strong outcome at the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow later this year. As a trained litigator on environmental law and human rights, Debbie Tripoli has acted and advised on a wide range of environmental policy and legal topics, including advising NGOs on the draft environmental bill. Debbie has also previously acted as CEO to the Environmental Law Foundation and set up her own charity focused on planetary boundaries. Its distinguished guests, I present Miss Debbie Tripoli.
Well, thank you so much, Vasi, ladies and gentlemen, Rotary members, for inviting me today. I'm so happy to be here to talk on International Women's Day, and it's a real honour for me to address you. I have prepared a presentation, but I guess we need to start by getting the elephant out of the room and talk about the elephant behind me. WWF is most known for pandas, but obviously the organisation does a range of work, both in conservation, but also on climate change and a lot of other areas such as ocean recovery and energy work in climate change. The elephant was drawn by a supporter, and I think it's a splendid drawing, and it saves you looking at my bookshelf. As Vasi said, I've been an environmental litigator and campaigner for over 20 years, and getting climate change emissions down to where they should be has probably been a mission of my entire career. So no surprise that today I'll be talking about climate change. But what I wanted to do was focus more on climate change in the context of gender equality and what climate change means for many women across the world, as this is not a focus of many talks. Recent UK surveys have shown most people in the UK now accept that climate change is happening and that urgent action is needed. But how climate change exacerbates gender inequality and poverty is less discussed. Climate change affects young people, women, and the poor disproportionately. It affects countries disproportionately. It will leave some peoples of small island states stateless. As sea levels rise and flooding becomes more prevalent, people's lives are destroyed and many people are made homeless. As women represent a majority of the poor in most of the world, many young women are likely to face a future with no schooling or only some basic education. Tragically, I think we all know that COVID-19 has unleashed further economic disaster for many women. But here in the UK, just to demonstrate the effects of COVID, a recent poll shows 70% of mothers with male partners were doing most of the homeschooling. Gender inequality has been exacerbated during the pandemic. I think we all know that. But climate change will cause similar concerns. To give the context to how things stand right now, the evidence of human interference with nature's decline over the past 50 years is just catastrophic. Humans have cleared 3 trillion trees, most of the fish in our oceans. In the last 50 years, species have declined by 60%. And that's a problem for all humanity. We have led to a great acceleration of the loss of nature and species by the way that we live. And the IPCC has warned us that we have until the end of the decade to reach 1.5 degrees, the minimum where we should be. But globally, we're currently not on track to achieve 1.5 degrees. We're not even on track for 2 degrees. We're probably around 3 degrees of warming. And that's likely to be catastrophic for us as people. Nevertheless, despite these gloomy statistics, I feel there are many, many reasons to be hopeful. For instance, China, one of the largest coal emitters and one of the biggest emitters globally, has committed to net zero emissions by 2060. This is Beijing's first long-term climate target. And that's really important. The US, with President Biden, has now rejoined the Paris Agreement another important milestone. And he's already putting in place climate-friendly policies and ending drilling in the Arctic. And at the end of the year, the world comes together to discuss climate at the COP26 in Glasgow, another important moment. WWF want the UK, as president of the COP process this year, to show real leadership. We want the UK to show that keeping 1.5 degrees on the table is really significant and important. And that means all countries committing to cutting deep climate emissions. We also want financial leaders to ensure that they commit to 1.5 degrees for all investments going forwards in the future. And we need agriculture to be put on a path of global sustainability, because agriculture is one of the greatest drivers for climate change, in particular in the way that it reduces deforestation and causes land degradation. But whilst the COP is an important moment, what makes me most hopeful is that women are leading the change on climate change. Women understand that climate change affects everyone, but doesn't affect everyone equally. Young people know that they are the first generation to demand change, but the last who are able to change it. Already, more than 1.7 million children under the age of 5 lose their lives every year as a result of avoidable environmental impacts. But more shocking is knowing that climate change will exacerbate those inequalities. To change, we need a fair and just transition to a greener future. And I'm made even more hopeful when I see how dynamic the movement is for a green revolution. 4 million young people across 7 continents have become youth strikers over the last few years. Young people politicized over inaction by our world leaders on climate change. And I think it's remarkable to see that it is girls leading the charge. As well as Greta Thunberg and her amazing activism, there have been many other remarkable young women. Take Hilda Nakabi, for instance, who in 2019 started Fridays for Future Uganda. Since then, since starting her Fridays for Future, she has increased her following to a remarkable 30,000 young Ugandans at the last count who went on youth strike. Young people, especially girls, are clearly leading a powerful movement for their futures. And in so doing, they are also having to stand up to verbal abuse and online threats. As Hilda has said in media interviews, people simply find it hard to believe women can inspire and run their own movements. But they can, and they are. There has also been an outburst of legal activism from young people, such as the 15 Mexican young people from the state of Baja California filing a climate lawsuit against their federal government. They've argued that climate change has reached emergency levels in Mexico due to inaction over greenhouse gas emissions. But even before them, there was the brave young Colombian youths, 25, who won their Supreme Court appeal in 2018, arguing Colombia had failed to stop a violation of their constitutional rights for a healthy environment. And here in the UK, WWF has intervened in the Heathrow runway case, arguing that the UK government failed to take into account climate change impacts on children. The UN Special Rapporteur for the Environment has argued that biodiversity is a human right. This year, global leaders will have another opportunity to come together and take urgent action to reverse the loss of the world's biodiversity when they meet at the Convention for Biological Diversity, where they can and should set new targets to reverse nature's decline. We all rely on biodiversity to regulate our climate, but at a more local level, women and girls are often the most affected by the loss of biodiversity. Just take, for one instance, the case of fresh water. In our recent report on our forgotten fishes, we note how, since the 1970s, migratory freshwater fish populations have declined by a critical 76% on average. Such declines are unsustainable, but their impacts will be felt directly by the millions who rely on freshwater fish for nutritious food. Like Tanzania, for instance, where 85% of the fish eaten is from fresh water. But it doesn't have to be this way. Most people understand their codependency on nature. For gender equality is part, I would suggest, of the climate change solution. Women need rights to a healthy environment, and with that should come land rights, such as is happening in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which currently is a very good example of solutions. In December 2018, 300 villages of DRC were granted 16 square miles of forest. For the first time in their history, the community had the legal right to own and manage the forest they live in. The project has been so successful that community ownership is being looked upon more broadly as a powerful tool in halting the decline of the Congo Basin rainforests. These reforms have allowed women to have an independent income. One woman who is granted land ownership has said the scheme has given her freedom. All that is what gender equality means for women, freedom to be independent. And with that freedom, I hope women will be a strong part of the climate change solution. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie Tripoli. Thank you. Our third speaker is another familiar face to our club, as Mrs. Diana Chan, securities expert and the former CEO of EuroCCP. Now, EuroCCP is a central counterparty that provided clearing services for 50% of stocks traded in Europe from 2007 to 2018. During her tenure, EuroCCP won the Clearing House of the Year award at the Financial News Awards 4 times. Diana has received a number of industrial awards for personal achievement, including the Global Custodian Lifetime Achievement Award in 2013, and was named one of the FN 100 Most Influential Women in Finance for 6 years, and was one of the FN 100 Most Influential People in 2015 and 2016. In 2018, Diana received the second highest votes in the Financial News Industry Leader of the Year award. In 2015, Diana organized the first Women Leaders in Financial Infrastructure conference, which subsequently became an annual event by popular demand. The conference aims to help young women in the industry reach their career potential faster and easier. Having left the People's Republic of China for Hong Kong when she was just 2 years old in a fishing boat, Diana is now a graduate of the University of Hong Kong and Harvard Business School, and has held management roles at JP Morgan, the Bank of New York, and Citibank. Diana is currently an independent non-executive director on the board of Euroclear SA/NV, the largest supplier of securities post-trade services in Europe. And I call up Mrs. Diana Chan. Thank you. Diana, Ms. Diana Chan, it's your turn. I can't see you. Clive, can you help? Oh, there we are.
Sorry, you hear me now?
Yes, it's you, yes.
Yes, thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Vasi, for the introduction. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to speak with you today and share some of my thoughts about Women in Leadership, International Women's Day, and the pandemic year and what it has illuminated us regarding women and leadership. There is one aspect of International Women's Day that is different from many special commemorative and celebratory days throughout the year. There are no traditions of food or cake or gifts or family or social gatherings associated with the day. I'm sure that I'm not the only person here who would like to see that changed. International Women's Day is a rather serious event, more purpose-filled than celebratory. The same could be said of International Workers' Day on May 1st, which, like International Women's Day, is mainly marked worldwide by conferences and parades. Both International Women and Workers' Days were created to focus public and political attention on interest groups' rights and demands, equal rights for women in the early 20th century, and the right to work an 8-hour day for workers in the late 19th century. As Vasi has said, the United Nations in 1977 invited member states to proclaim March 8th as the UN Day for Women's Rights and World Peace. The theme is further reinforced in the UN Sustainable Development Goal of gender equality. March 8th is formally earmarked as an annual event to focus society on the necessary efforts and changes to achieve gender equality. The theme of the day continues to be mainly a call for action. There are many aspects of equality in our society that need to be tackled, and gender equality is only one of them. The COVID pandemic has focused on many of these inequalities, social inequalities, inequalities of minorities. The main instances of inequality actually stems from the inequality of minorities, the tendency of the majority to marginalize or neglect the minority. Gender equality is, however, different. There are as many women as there are men. It would seem like it's an easier problem to solve because, logically, there are proportionally fewer people we need to convince to change for equality to happen between the genders. But it is not. It is the same type of problem, how to ensure equal opportunity for everyone. The COVID pandemic has offered an excellent opportunity to highlight the fact that if given the opportunity, women could definitely succeed just as well as men. The current crisis presents a great opportunity to study leadership in action. The nature of the pandemic, a global pandemic, means that all world leaders are confronted with the same problem at the same time. This has never happened in history. Each leader deals with the crisis in a different manner. Both men and women are among leaders in countries which have controlled the spread of the virus and minimized deaths successfully. In a crisis, trust in the leadership affects the outcome. Charisma is of less practical use than experience and competence. Both men and women have proven themselves to be up to the job. The Harvard Business Review published an article recently titled, "Women Are Better Leaders During a Crisis." I would not assert that women are better leaders in a crisis than men. There are good and poor leaders in both genders in all situations. But I do hope that the many highly visible women leaders during this pandemic serve as highly visible role models for the younger generation of what is possible when there are opportunities to face challenges, and for the younger generation to continue the path of advocating for equal opportunity for all to reach their full potential of contribution to society. Finally, I would just like to take a moment on this International Women's Day to share with you a personal history, a story of an important woman in my life, my mother, to recognize her influence in my life and success. When my mother graduated from teacher training college at 20, she became a kindergarten teacher. She held the same job in the same school until her retirement. She would not be what we call in today's terms a trailblazing success. She was in many ways a woman of her times. Women who worked when she was working mainly went into teaching or nursing. That was her career choice when she was 20 years of age. Most working women, like my mother, had a job, but no concept of a career, where one would advance to assume greater responsibility and recognition in an organization. But my mother, although limited by her opportunities at the time, was very wise and kind of unconventional for her time. An important advice she gave me was always have your own money. This would be the same advice I offer to all young women. Financial independence means freedom. Equal opportunity is a prerequisite to achieving financial independence and social equality. But to be able to grab an opportunity when it arises, one needs to be well prepared through education and continuous personal effort to do better all the time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. Our final speaker is Ms. Nandini Sukumar, the Chief Executive Officer of the World Federation of Exchanges, WFE. The WFE seeks to educate on how exchange and CCPs serve the economy and represents more than 250 exchanges and clearinghouse globally. It educates stakeholders on the vital role played by market infrastructures in the real economy and as a standard setter, finding the consensus on issues among the global membership. Ms. Nandini Sukumar is the Vice Chair of IOSCO's Affiliate Members Consultative Committee and an advisory board member of the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative. Nandini has been involved with women in financial market infrastructures projects from its launch. She created and drives the WFE's annual Women Leaders Focus edition, which aims to spotlight the excellence of the many women in leadership positions in the industry. Initiative for World Investor Week. She has grown the annual ring, the bell of gender equality, which the WFE runs in conjunction with the UN to over 90 exchanges worldwide. I now call upon Ms. Nandini Sukumar. Thank you.
Thank you, Vazi, and what a pleasure it is to be here today. In starting off, may I excuse myself for not turning on my camera. I've been booted out 3 times in the last hour since I joined you all with my internet connection. So I will ask on this occasion to talk to you and hopefully meet you all one day soon. Thank you very much. It's a distinguished invitation. I've known Diana Chan, who we've just heard from. She has been a great mentor and a guide to me through my career. And when Diana And Diana actually, for me, is a wonderful example of a woman who leads by example and empowers those around her, other women around her, to believe that they can achieve. So, thank you, Diana, if I could start by saying that and not embarrass you too much. It's a pleasure to be here at the Rotary Club. I grew up with many people in my life being members of the Rotary Club, so I was pleased, not having been involved in London at all, to realize that you are still going strong and exist, and that you gather, the wonderful global membership that you have around you. The theme of this year's International Women's Day, as all of you know, is Choose to Challenge. And it's a call to action, to raise our hands for an inclusive society committed to eliminating inequality. And all this week, exchanges and CCPs, such as the one that Diana led so successfully, around the world, they are ringing their bell. So they're ringing either the opening bell or the closing bell all week to shine a light and show their commitment on the issue of equality for women. But I'm also delighted to be speaking to you here today for another reason. And it's because I think that we are in a special year. And it's special. Why is it special? It's not special only because, we are vaccinating furiously for COVID, and that in time, this will be something that everyone in the world, we hope, will have access to. It's because it feels like 2021, it might be a marker. It might be a tipping point, perhaps, in terms of the recognition of the role of women's contribution in society and in the workplace, and also perhaps a marker in awareness of how important it is to enable and empower women in the workplace. And I use the word marker deliberately. I don't think, it is still a call to action, right? We have far to go in terms of where we want to be and in terms of where we need to be. But going back to my day job, exchanges and CCPs all around the world have collectively and individually, as an industry and individual members, ring the bell every year on International Women's Day, and every year the number grows. But this year, we have 107 ringing the bell. And that's a historic high. Last year, there were 77. And the exchange is typically kind of a symbolic place. It's the face of a capital market. And in the years since we had the global financial crisis, the CCP, has become an increasingly important and visible part of that mix. And when I started in this industry, I was struck by the fact that there seemed to be more women in the exchanges meeting, in the industries meeting, than perhaps there were in other bits of the industry. And looking back to my predecessors, we're an old industry association. We were founded in 1961, and the WFE itself, had a female CEO or female secretary general, as they called them back in the day, in the 70s. And as I look around today, there are about 10 or 15 markets around the world that are led by women. And that's actually both good and also a sign of how far we have to go, because there are probably, we represent 300 markets, and there are, maybe 15 that I can think of which are led by women. But that's an opportunity. That is our opportunity for those of us here today. And why is it that the exchanges have cared about diversity, or have had championed it all these years? And I think that's partly because the exchange, which sits at the heart of the capital market system, is about inclusion, and it's about bringing people together. And I think that is really kind of part of it. I mean, for exchanges, that inclusion is obviously represented or expressed through financial inclusion. And so we believe in the power of our industry to play a role in fostering a society and an economy which reduces inequality, which redistributes more equitably. And that is why we have championed sustainable growth and development long before they became as mainstream and as apparent in people's consciousness as they are today. So in thinking about what I wanted to say today and what I wanted to speak to you all a little bit about, I reflected on perhaps what I would choose to challenge, because obviously choose to challenge is this year's call to arms. And in making my selection, I reflected a little bit on J.D. Anderson of the Cover Project. And she said, women are already strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength. And how true that is. And now, what can we do about it as an industry and as a society? So we've heard a lot. I think we've heard from the ambassador, and we've heard from Debbie about what we can do a little bit about as a society. But what can we do in our industries? So this year, we set up a Women in Leadership initiative, and that aimed to shine the spotlight at women in leadership roles across our industry. And we did it for a couple of reasons, because it was a positive policy incentive. It meant that every exchange of CCP in the world, looked at that list and thought, well, we need to have someone to nominate for it. And if we don't have someone this year, we should be thinking about who we're going to nominate next year, and so on. And so we hope with that to have a greater understanding and an awareness that drives a need and action itself. So this initiative, which Diana is part of, we have 9 distinguished, female leaders, on the selection committee, and Diana is one of them. We thought a little bit also about how and what we wanted to address with it. And so it's a global list, we're a global organization, and we had 60 nominations in the first year, which is good, and it'll probably be 10 times that in 5 years' time. As women learn to step forward, women in our industry know that they must put their hand up to be counted and to be nominated. But we chose 20, and we also asked, when we made that list public, we asked some of the selection committee to write on leadership, and I asked Diana actually to write on leadership in crisis, and that's publicly available. I encourage you all to read it. It was very insightful. She said very profoundly that leadership is counted by outcomes, not by intention. But anyway, so we had 20 women on the final list, and they came from everywhere. We had Asia, we had Central Asia, and Europe, Middle East, Africa, the Americas, all represented on that list. And they had, they came from large markets, from small markets, emerging and frontier. They were very developed markets, and they had diverse job titles and diverse backgrounds. And certainly they've had diverse challenges to get to where they are. And when I went through the 60 nomination forms, I looked to see what were the common themes that arose. And they were interesting. So the first common theme that arose, that was consistent across all the 60, was that they were all highly educated. So women, it appears, value and understand education. They're also good students. Many of them were lawyers. And, we heard from Debbie earlier today, who is a litigator. So many of the women on this list were lawyers. And it's a professional qualification that will always stand the student in good stead. Interestingly, despite the fact that a lot of them had professional qualifications, the women on our list didn't necessarily have conventional career paths. So it appears that from that list, which is, I would say, absolutely representative of the financial services industry, women leaders had seen an opportunity, they had raised their hand, and ultimately they'd been rewarded for taking that risk and for their undoubted hard work, diligence, and excellence. Another common theme that emerged, many of them referenced their mothers and their grandmothers as their inspiration. And almost all of them referenced their parents as the primary reason they had believed they could achieve professional success. And I can certainly say the same for me. So they had strong role models from the outset. Many of them also talked about how much they enjoyed learning and continued to learn in their jobs. And so you could assume that everyone on that list was intellectually curious and continues to be in quest of something. Everyone consistently talked about hard work, and that came through in the nomination forms. Women put a list of things that they had done. We asked a question, tell us about your achievements this last year, this year of COVID. And they were very specific and they were very data-driven in terms of the way they quantified what they had done, their professional successes for the last year. And all of them talked about needing to find your own voice in this world. So today we are here. Thank you again for inviting me. We're celebrating, I think, how far we have come. We are united, I'm sure, in understanding that we have much further to go. I mean, in many ways, this journey is just at its beginning. And we have all committed, I think, and that's what 2021 perhaps will be a marker for, to leading that way, choosing to challenge. And that's regardless of our roles or where we are or what we're doing. So in parting, I'd like to leave you with Sheryl Sandberg. In the future, there will be no female leaders. There will just be leaders. Thank you. I wish you a happy Women's Day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nandini. Thank you. Right, I hope you all enjoyed our 4 speakers. Have your questions ready. And when we come back after the break, you can ask your questions. We will now have an 8-minute break for a piano performance, following which our speakers will take questions. So kindly, as I said earlier, have your questions ready. After the piano performance, past President and Sergeant at Arms Clive will take over to take your questions. Please come back to your places, but let me introduce our artist today. She is Maiko Mori, an internationally acclaimed concert pianist who has given recitals in the UK, Italy, Spain, Germany, France, Sweden, India, and her home country, Japan. Maiko is a prize winner of numerous competitions and awards. So, Maiko, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vasi. I hope you can hear me okay with this microphone. It is such an honor to be invited to this wonderful event today and to perform for all of you here.
We can't see you.
Can you see me okay?
We can't see you yet.
Everyone, you can't see me?
Past President Clive.
I can't see her, no.
Oh, okay. Please, just a moment, please.
You can't see her. No.
Looks as if your camera is on, Miko, but...
That's very strange.
Probably you have to volume up your microphone.
Can you hear me okay this time?
Yeah, no, we can't. We don't see you, even though my list here shows that your camera is on. Your video camera is on.
That's very strange. Okay, can I come back here in a... in a second.
Okay.
Good. Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm using my camera. Can you see me now?
We can see you now.
we can
Yes,
see
thank
you.
you.
That's great. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, let's start over. Okay, I'm going to perform for you today on two pieces. The first one is Nocturne Opus 9, number 2 by Chopin. And the other piece is called Libel Tango. This is by Astor Piazzolla, arranged for piano by a Japanese female composer and pianist, Kyoko Yamamoto. I chose this particular piece because this year marks the 100th anniversary of Piazzolla's birth. So I hope you enjoy it.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. That's
Thank
lovely.
you very much, Vasi. Thank you.
Well, I hope all of you enjoyed that. Well, are you all back
Excellent.
on your back to your seats? Well, can I call Clive? Clive, can you please take over now?
Yes, thank you, Past President Vasi. Hello, everybody. I'm now going to conduct this part of the session, which relates to questions. Now, the images are over 4 screens, so there's no good just sitting on the screen and waving at me. I'm afraid I'm unlikely to be able to see you. So if you have a question, if you can unmute yourself, that should bring you to the top of the list of my participants that I have here. And another way is if you can go to the reactions button and switch on and a little blue hand comes up, I can also see you. That will also bring you to the top of the questions. Now, can you please say to whom your question is addressed? We've had 4 excellent speakers today, but if you could just say to whom your question is addressed, that would be most helpful. So I wonder if I can start. I'll have Margaret James Cooper, then Eve Conway, and then Marilyn Potter. So Margaret, if you're, and can I say to everybody, please, can you make them questions? We appreciate you might want to make your comments, but it's much better if you could make them a question rather than a lengthy comment. So Margaret, can we start with you, please? And I say then Eve and then Marilyn Potter.
Thank you very much, Clive. I have a very simple question, actually. It's to the Rwanda speaker, Rwanda representative speaker.
Yes, Their Excellency, yes.
Well, I mean, yeah, it looks like President Kigali is doing a very good job. I mean, what is it like in the country now between the Tutsis and the Hutsis? What is the relationship between those 2 tribes?
Thank you. Your Excellency, can you take that question, please?
Thank you for the question. Well, what's happening is after '94, we as a country decided to unite. So also, if you go back a bit in the history of our country, those tribes are not tribes in the real sense of the word. So the Hutus and the Tutsi speak the same language, which then makes it very difficult to separate the 2, which also makes it, if given clarity of leadership, easier to reunite. So after the genocide, we had very quickly started to address issues of reconciliation. Those who committed the genocide, again, are the extremists. It wasn't a tribe per se, it was extremism that played its role. We started addressing those issues. We then quickly moved on to establish a legal framework to protect all citizens. And the journey continues. You never finish, right? It's the matter of keeping on, ensuring that citizens are protected, amending the laws on genocide itself. That is an ongoing exercise. We've amended the genocide law 4 times. So it's an ongoing, it's part of the journey to reconciliation, but we are certainly in a much better frame of mind as a people than we were when, as I mentioned in my speech, divisive leadership was the law of the land. Today, we look at ourselves as Rwandans. We do not identify specifically as Tutsis or Hutus, and we are minding the rebuilding of the country as our priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on Eve Conway, can I just say how delighted we are that we have two of our RIBI past presidents with us today. That's Eve Conway and Debbie Hodge. Most appropriate to have two women who've been president of RIBI with us today. Eve, would you like to put your question, please?
Yeah, thank you for that, Clive, and also thanks to all our amazing speakers, and happy International Women's Day to everyone. My question is actually to all four speakers, or whoever wishes to answer it, really. If you look at the crisis we're in at the moment with the global pandemic, why do you think that it is countries that have women leaders like New Zealand, where they've had 24 deaths, and Taiwan?
I think it is one that may be correlated but not causal. In the case of Taiwan, it has been it has suffered from SARS a number of years ago. So it benefits from some experience dealing with a very contagious epidemic. New Zealand is a very small country and isolated. So maybe it is coincidence, maybe it's not, but I would hesitate to draw conclusions just from two data points, not to negate the tremendous success in leadership of these two women, but I think it's probably a more complex matter than just one element. Both countries took decisive action, which might not be popular, and I think both countries also benefit from trust in government, which is not necessarily something that could be achieved in the short term, but it has a lot to do with the cultural context of these countries. I also think that it is not very helpful for the women's cause to generalize, to say, look, women are better leaders. I would like to just say that there are other cases like Singapore, for example, that has been very successful. China is a tremendous success in controlling the spread because of it being such a vast country, even though it suffered tremendously at the start of the.
In fact, we have caused pollution, contamination, and extraordinary other damages to the environment of this earth. What is the opinion of the speakers as to how possibly this human expansion is affecting the world today, and how could it possibly be controlled?
That's probably one for Debbie. Debbie, are you still with us?
Yeah, I didn't quite hear. Was it consumption or population? I couldn't quite hear.
Human expansion. Overpopulation of the world. The population explosion of human beings affecting climate and the whole of our environment.
Yeah, well, I mean, population is obviously part of the one part of all of the problems facing us in driving down climate emissions. The solutions, of course, are a lot more complex. Although I have seen recent figures, and I think David Attenborough quotes this, saying that the population, the global population, is beginning to stall, and that they expect by 2050 or by the end of the century that population will be growing older, not increasing, which is an interesting statistic. But I don't know quite where he gets that statistic from, but that's the sort of assessment that he's saying. And he's therefore saying that it's a question of how we live with the population which we believe we will have at the end of the century, which probably won't be growing, but will be aging, which will be part of our other challenge in facing climate change, because obviously that puts even more climate change. But the other thing that people generally say about population is that it's not actually expansion that is essentially the issue. It's really how we have chosen to live and consume as humanity on the planet. And it's our consumption of natural resources rather than actually the way that we control or could control natural resources, especially in the global north, that is driving climate change. One example of that is in the global north, by which I mean the UK and Europe. We consume vastly more of commodities driven from deforestation in countries like Brazil and Indonesia to enable us to feed our cattle for meat, because we eat too much meat, to produce palm oil, which is in almost everything that we eat as consumers. Palm oil takes up a lot of agricultural land. And so it's the conversion of land from primary forest to agricultural land, which is driving a lot of climate change as much as fossil fuels. So it's a complex set of issues, I think, and it's not necessarily right to just say expansion of population is, or less population would be the solution. And of course, the other solution to all of this is better equality for women and better education for girls.
Thank you. I'm now going on to speaker. I've got Elko. I don't know, I can't address you by name. That's all I've got on the list.
I'm going to introduce myself. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, no, please come on.
Okay, so it's the abbreviation for London College for Excellence Training Limited.
All right, that's your business, yeah. Well, yeah. To whom is your question addressed?
So my question, anybody can answer, very simple question. My name is Talha Fiaz. And if the question is just, I would like to just know, I'm really obliged for all the precious time and lovely speakers. It really enriched my experience and knowledge. I'm really thankful for giving me opportunity to be part of this meeting. I'm really thankful, first of all, and I've learned so much today. But just want to know on a closing note that what we have achieved today on Women International Day, what is our future agenda? How we're going to empower the women on this occasion? What are future plans and how we can summarize that? What are the main points and how I or all of us can contribute towards it?
Thank you. Who would like to take that one?
Thank you very much.
Yes, who would like to take that question? One of our speakers, please.
And I know on climate change, I would say that as women, we should get behind a roadmap for ensuring that climate change doesn't disproportionately impact on gender equality and girls. And I know that's a bigger issue than, you know, in many respects, there are other obvious issues that affect women in terms of gender equality and poverty, etc. But climate change going forward in their futures is going to be a big part of that equation. And therefore, if we had a roadmap collectively on what we could do as women, or what we thought we could do, going fantastic thing to do. And obviously there are women leading already that sort of activism.
Thank you. Caroline Muir, your question, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
My question is for Her Excellency. It is actually quite a delicate one, but it does affect fundamental gender equality and women's health. How prevalent is FGM in Rwanda?
Your Excellency.
Well, thank you very much. We're lucky that we do not have that specific issue in my country. So we are spared. But as we know, one can never find or think they are safe when we know that it's so prevalent still in many of our regions in East Africa. So ours is just among civil society and government to continue raising the alarm with our sister countries where we know prevalence remains, and educating populations about the damage caused by FGM. So in Rwanda, we are lucky in a sense not to have this as prevalent, but we remain alert and then continue promoting safety for the daughters of Africa and beyond, really, on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I don't see anybody with their hand up or unmuting themselves.
Question of Maiko, she's still there, which is how do you think the position is these days for professional classical music women, and how it's perhaps changed over the course of her career as a pianist?
Maiko, are you still with us?
Yes, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Yes, at the moment, because of the COVID-19 situation, not only women, but we are experiencing huge issues at the moment. All the concerts and then tours have been cancelled. And it's been a, I have to say, it's been a disaster for last year especially. And I see it's the vaccination is going through everyone at the moment, but it will take good. I don't know how long it's going to take, but 1 or 2 years to get back to normal. So I have to say, being a musician is extremely tough. But I'm hoping that situation is going to get better, and then hopefully we can all get together and then enjoy the live performance.
Thank you. I'm now going to call on Caroline Nicholas and then Olivia Au. Caroline, would you like to address your question, please?
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you very much for Vazi for inviting me on this super day. Thank you very much. There was just one thing that Nandini mentioned. She mentioned a book that she felt everybody should read. I think she said it was Leadership in Crisis. And I just wanted to know if that was the case and if that was the correct title of the book, so I can go buy it.
Yeah. It's an article that Diana wrote
I see.
as part of her kind of selection committee judges. And I asked her to write, I asked her to make a contribution on leadership in crisis.
Right,
but
okay.
I'm very happy. We're very happy to send it to you. It's in our monthly magazine.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Olivia Au, and then Ian Bolton.
Hi, good afternoon. You see, it's a very hot topic. You see, it's about, because this is a Women's Day today, and it's regarding Megan. What I'm trying to say is that as a woman, you see, she continues to support a lot of charitable causes, and which reflect the issue which she has been associated, including support for women and animal welfare. And yet there's not 100% of support to uplift her. So my question is, how is it possible to, to know that if women still advocate for women's rights?
Question to Debbie.
Question to, sorry, Debbie. Hello.
I'm quite sure I understand or heard the question. How is it possible? I'll say it again, Olivia.
How is it possible that to know that if women will advocate for women's rights, if what she has been going through?
Whether women will advocate for women's rights, or
yes.
if they can.
Yeah.
Whether women will advocate for women's rights. I think women do. I think we're all here today, and I think we would all advocate for women's rights. I think it's as difficult as it probably has been just in the UK. And I think a lot of people in the UK are probably better off than a lot of other women in many countries. But just in the UK, women have clearly been suffering under COVID and being pushed back. I think the article I read was women feeling they were being pushed back to the 1970s. But I do take heart from my daughters. I have two daughters, and one of them, I think, well, both of them probably fall into what's called Gen Z or Generation Z. And I think Generation Z, as you can see from Fridays for Future, these young women are really ferocious advocates. They aren't going to have a future where people tell them that they can't do things or have things. Young women, you watch them, they are very, very good at standing up for themselves and other women, and they're not like I was in my generation. So I take heart from my daughters and the strength that they have, which I don't think I potentially exemplified when I was their age. If that's a very good answer.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks very much for that. Ian Bolcombe, your question, please. And then President David, and that will have to be the last one. Ian Bolcombe and then President
Thank you,
David.
Clive, and thank you to all the speakers. They've all been excellent. But Debbie, on the environment, you mentioned about school strikes on Fridays. And I'm not saying it's my particular opinion, and it's not really something I really thought about until I read an article an opinion in the Times recently, where the writer, who is a woman, said this was perhaps not an ideal role model for school children to be striking or walking out of school.
It's going to be different people will have their own opinions on that. I think that young people feel they have nowhere else to go to raise their voice. Let's face it, they're not included within decision-making process. There is no process for young people to talk about how they feel about their future. I grew up in the nuclear age. Many of you might have done as well, where as young people, we feared constantly that there would be a nuclear attack. Young people are growing up in the climate age where they fear they won't have a future. And I feel that taking one day off a week to explain to politicians that they need to see action to secure their future is fair, if there is no other way that they can express their voices. So that's my view.
Closing up.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good comparison. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. And then the last question from President David, please.
I'd like to thank all the speakers for their amazing contributions. But my question is gender equality the best chance we have for world peace?
And who would like to take that? Which one of our speakers?
I'll go first. I'm sure everybody will
Nandini.
want to say something. Yes, I would say that gender equality, is our best chance for pretty much all problems that we've, considered. I think a more equitable, more inclusive workforce and society on every level is just better for all of us. So it's a bit like climate change, we can, if we won't, it's about the future, really.
Thank you. Anybody else, any of the other speakers wish to?
Her Excellency would say to that.
Well, thank you. What I wanted to add is it only makes sense that women are invited to fully participate, because only then, I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, and in as much as you look at Goal 5 as focused on women, but you will not resolve 11, 12, 1 through 30 really, without a full involvement of women. We're talking about the environment today, but if one moves to education, it's the same thing, right? So I must agree that if only when women are fully included in participating in this, not only decision making, even implementation of key policies, that are set, would we see a fairer and indeed more peaceful world? Engaging women, I think, touches on everything. It touches on youth, it touches on men, it touches on societies and communities in general. So one only would need to look at that aspect of inviting women to fully participate so as to really be inclusive. Because again, women will think of all other members of society and seek for their inclusion in resolving the challenges that the world face.
Thank you very much. Unless anybody, any of the other speakers wish to contribute to that, which I'm not asking them to, unless they wish to. Can I now?
And, now I'm going to call upon Rotarian Caroline Moore to give the vote of thanks. And after that, our president will take over with a final toast and whatever he would like to say. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Firstly, on behalf of us all here today, I extend a very warm vote of thanks to the four wonderful and inspiring speakers who've shared their experiences and vision with us, and to our talented pianist, Meiko Mori, who has delighted us with her music. Each one of them are women who have made their own way and are successful in male-dominated worlds through their own talent and hard work. I'm sure that we're all lost in admiration for what they have achieved, both in their careers and influence as leaders, and the depth of knowledge they have shared today. Her Excellency Yamina Karitani in the minefield of diplomacy, Deborah Tripley in the ever more vital sphere of environmental policy, Diana Chen as a leader in strategic financial services, and Nandini Sukumar as a senior player in the world of stock markets. All are traditionally male-dominated working environments, and all the ladies have forged top-flight careers despite the perceived handicap of their sex. They are all pioneers paving the way for others to follow. International Women's Day was established to remind the world of women's presence and contribution to society. Sadly, even in the 21st century, this reminder is still very necessary, as the value of women's work and abilities continue to be underrated and are not accorded the respect they deserve. Today, thanks to these ladies, we have a shining example of how far women have come, and they give us hope that society's attitudes are changing for the better, with women in the vanguard. Thank you again for all your inspiration and hope, and I personally enjoyed every one of your talks, and you've given me great food for
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Caroline. I now just need to. I will present the certificates to the speakers on the screen. They should be arriving in a digital form to you, to each of you, shortly.
President David, can I interrupt? Can we give them a very big applause?
Oh, we did again. We do find it awfully difficult to applaud people on Zoom, because by the time we've actually gone off mute, we've missed the opportunity. But really, hear the congratulations as they come from our hearts rather than from our hands.
And to Vasi too.
And to Vasi as well. And Vasi, thank you so much for putting this event together. I think it has been a very, very great luncheon. Just as well, we didn't have to eat as well because we didn't have time for that. So thank you, Vasi, for all you have done for the club and for women in this event. I'm very pleased that as my ambassador for this event, you have done such a great job. Thank you. Congratulations to Vasi. Little remains but for me to announce the next meeting, which is Isabella, one of our members, Isabella, and she's going to talk about her role in the maritime and shipping industry, focusing on the Maritime Labour Convention. And this is amazing, really, because the international law of maritime operations is unique as a non-geographic application of law. So that's next week is Isabella. So I'll move to the final toast. If you have your glass, and while you're getting your glass or vessel, I'll remind you that we do seek to raise charitable funds. And those that have been made aware of concerns today, we will be sending out an invitation to donate to educating girls. So that will come to all those that have been on the call today. So the final toast: to Rotary and peace the world over, which we take slowly
the world over.
The world over. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I will close the meeting with our sonorous bell.